browse around and find that. So get that question answered for me real quick. While you're doing that, Brendan, Ray, thanks for having us. I've gone through my spiel, but I do have one question for you. Brendan, I'll start with you. What's the one thing you're most excited about this year for you and your teams?
Ooh, there's a lot around that. I'm excited to see what the outcome will be for how artificial intelligence will actually impact sales leaders, especially frontline sales leaders, where we'll give them time back. How can they become more effective and efficient? And how does that go downstream to our reps to make them more effective and efficient? And Ray, super excited to be here with you. I know you're an expert in this stuff, so thanks for joining us.
No, thrilled to be here, and thanks for the invitation. And I'll build on your theme, Brendan. I think I'm excited to see some of the promise of AI come to fruition, and I say that pretty confidently because I think if it doesn't, we're all in trouble. But
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of like it's time to stop talking about it and really start getting some value. And I think some of the themes we're going to get into with the frontline manager do exactly that. There is low hanging fruit out there. There are some things that we can do, but we need to help out the managers to be more effective, and I think can really help enable that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. And Ray, looking at this poll question here, I'm very interested to see what some of the results are going to come back. I very rarely speak to folks that say that they're very confident that their sales managers have a 100% accurate pipeline. So where do you think the answers are going to fall here?
Yeah, I mean, I think between a coin flip and having no idea, I guess the coin flip is, well, we think the data's there, but we're really not sure, or they really just aren't clear or don't have the data. I can't tell you the number of clients we work with where, even the senior sales leaders are like, we need to adjust it by 30 to 50% every month when we get to the
Yeah.
end of the cycle. And I think that's concerning if you're trying to roll that up into a board presentation, for your private equity or public organizations. That can be really difficult. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the audience says.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now. You guys are right on par with this, and I'll share the results. For those of you that are on demand, there was 23% of you that said you're confident. 69% said it's a coin flip, and 8% they have no idea what they're doing.
You're not alone. You're not alone. I mean, we even see it,
Right.
Ray, in large publicly traded companies adjusting EPS. And you see time after time that in these large organizations, if you have 50, 100, 200 frontline managers, and it's a coin flip for all of their forecast accuracy, very quickly as you get up into the VP, SVP, C level, it is a coin flip at best for them to start to manage their business.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it goes both ways too. We see the whoops, we're going to have to push out all of these deals. So it's not as rosy as we might have thought. And that's a challenge. We have actually seen the other side. I had a public organization where they said, we find $1 million worth of business at the end of the month that we didn't know was going to come in because people are hesitant to put it in, or
Right.
they're being conservative, or they don't trust the system. But that's an issue too. I mean, that affects your production, that affects obviously your ongoing forecast and finances. So yeah, we need to get that right.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for participating in the poll. I think we're going to get into a very quick agenda here before we get into the meat of the presentation. As Marcus
Yep.
mentioned, the chat is open. Ray and I will monitor that as well, but feel free to chime in. So we have a lot to cover today, a lot of exciting and relevant topics. We know that all of you are experiencing change across the go-to-market motion, right? Expanding buying committees, risks hiding later in the evaluation process or further down the funnel as we go through the 2025 year and into 2026. So today we're going to share some incredible insights from Ray and the SBI team on their research on how managers are actually spending their time, the time traps that they find themselves in, and how we can start to propel our managers into the future, leveraging some of the artificial intelligence that we've either invested in currently or will invest in the future to make them more efficient and effective than ever. As always, we'll leave time for questions at the end and some open discussions. But Ray, why don't we dive right in for us and set the stage?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to share. And I will say this is, insights from our brilliant research team. but it's an area we're really excited about because I think it is one that we need to pay attention to, and is really valuable in terms of framing the thought process around enabling those frontline managers. The basis of this was a time study that we did across over 500 frontline sales managers, really looking at how they're currently allocating their time, what's consuming the most of their time. And the way I'd characterize this pie chart is if you look at the maroon side, you can kind of think of those as their required activities, or they're things that they just today have to do, having to track opportunities, having to plan, having to produce reports and analyze and administrative duties. Over half of their time are on those activities that frankly are kind of repetitive, maybe not as highly value added. And we think that those are areas ripe for some automation or some improvement using artificial intelligence. When you look at the left side and the blue shades, those are areas that are really more strategic and highly leveraged. So, coaching their team, managing their performance, and helping them improve and close those gaps, and really helping them sell and close deals, not taking over the deal, but really helping them be more effective, helping the sales teams be more effective. So, when we look at that, there's a lot of time that's just not helping the sellers or directly engage. And it's similar to when we do the time study with sellers, they spend a lot of time that's not engaging with the customer and not actually selling. And obviously that costs a lot across the organization. So I don't know if this resonates with you or what you've seen in that role, Brendan, but this is kind of how we saw that across 500 plus managers.
This makes complete sense to me that this is what we would see. And we think about it in the Sandler term, right? Like the pay time versus non-pay time, right? There's a lot of time being spent on back end stuff that's very important to get done and needs to happen, but doesn't necessarily drive revenue or drive success for the sales team. So we're constantly thinking about, for both our internal teams, but our customers as well, how do we get managers more time to impact revenue and spend more time with sellers? It's the only way that we can really impact the teams, or the biggest way that we know managers can impact the team. So this data is fantastic and makes 100% sense.
Yep.
Ray, just diving in here, I'd love to understand, kind of where they're required to spend time as managers, where we think they should or need to spend time in order to have a successful organization.
Yeah, and I think when we look at those, and those of us who have sat in that chair, it's unbelievable the amount of requests we get for data, for reporting, for just tracking things to make sure they're accurate, or CRM hygiene, one of the manager's favorite activities to work on. Those are things that we can enable, and we should be thinking about how we do that. And certainly there are a ton of third-party applications. There's a lot of AI solutions coming out, but we did this with a client where we just had them look at, hey, what are one or two things that you could leverage AI today to help you with? Even if that's preparing for one-on-ones, or helping consolidate information for performance reviews, or scrubbing the pipeline to look for deals that are outside of the normal parameters. Those kinds of things, we were able to find 4 hours a week of just low-hanging fruit to say, all right, what would you do with 10% of your time back to help your customers or help your salespeople be more effective? And so, that's leveraging those things that we're required to spend, and then the things that we would like them to do. And I think there's huge opportunity leveraging, as we'll get to, platforms like Allego to help with enabling them to be more effective in the time that they spend on coaching and managing performance and advancing those deals.
Yeah, Ray, this top bucket to me too, if we're all being honest with ourselves, when managers are spending time on this, we know what they're doing, right? They're calling or slacking, or they're on Teams pinging all of their reps to say, update this, do this, complete this. It's a lot of reps getting chased by managers to do stuff that should be done automatically, right? And the way that we think about it internally, our chief people officer has this great phrase that each interaction is either a withdrawal or a deposit, just like a bank or a piggy bank. So you're either withdrawing from your sellers by asking them to do mundane, monotonous work so that you can report up to your VP or CRO that, this has been completed and I've checked the box, or you're making a deposit by adding value, either helping them get some coaching or manage to a particular performance gap, or actually getting involved in their pipeline opportunities and helping them move those further down the road. So when I see this, it's not just managers spending time on this. There's a ton of work going on the rep side to chase down little loose ends for their managers.
Well, I love that analogy, and I think we spend a lot of time withdrawing. It withdraws from the manager and from our sales team, and takes away from those value producing activities. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, we're biased here at Allego as a revenue enablement platform that coaching, performance management, and supporting selling activities are very impactful things that managers can do. But I think it's going to be awesome to see today exactly how we can get, like you said, even if it's 10% more time for them to focus on those activities, how much more effective can we be? How can we drive revenue, and how can we scale teams? So very excited to dig further in as we go through the presentation, Ray.
That's great. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about these three core responsibilities that you have here. This is a great chart for me, but I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on some of the themes, but if we break that down and really look at elevating the coaching game, and it's an area we spend a lot of time, training and enabling managers to have better selling skills, but now leveraging that AI capabilities. So it's not, oh, you hope to join one of your reps or listen to a call recording a couple times a month, to let's look at all of those and aggregate that information and now produce the themes that you should coach on. Now, I don't believe that AI is going to do the coaching, at least not in the near term. I think what it does is it enables the manager to then be more effective and have more valuable conversations. We always talk in our workshops about, often coaching feels like it's just the judgment, the manager saying,
Yes.
well, I think you should do this, or that didn't go very well. Well, now we have those insights and we can literally break that down and say, well, no, let's go to minute 22 of that call recording and let's replay that and watch the customer's reaction. Now let's talk about it. That's a different kind of coaching conversation where we can really have the specific context. We can play that back and say, well, let's practice that. So whether it's an AI role play or with the manager, but say, let's rewind and go through that pricing discussion again. Or help to build those skill gaps or those weak areas. So I think it really helps to leverage and drive better coaching and scale that to be more effective. And then with deal progress, again, being able to identify those deals that are at risk in advance. And we always say, it takes longer to lose a deal than it does to win a deal oftentimes. Yeah. And, but we're not always looking at that. It's like, why has that been in stage for 180 days? Like, what's going on there? Why are we allowing that to happen? Well, AI can really highlight and shine a spotlight on those areas that are at risk, maybe that we didn't even realize because there's more going on there. So we can compare it. We can start to do that pattern recognition. Now the manager can jump in, validate that against what their reality is or what they're observing, the context.
Right.
And we know that AI isn't 100% right and it can hallucinate or make wrong assumptions. Well, we need to then dive into the details, but it can at least help identify those areas we should be looking at. And then we can apply our experience and our expertise to intervene and help, advance that deal. So I really think accelerating that deal progress is huge. And then we already talked about some of the administrative areas, but, whether that's conversational intelligence, leveraging those transcripts, pulling together the forecast information. It's like, should we have to beat up the CRM to have that information, or should it just know, right? Based on the call recordings and based on what's happened, and creating those reports and dashboards so that the manager then can be the one helping the team move forward and again, lean in on those insights versus spending their time working on updating the information or just making sure that report's okay for their leadership, so they don't get beaten up over it, right?
Yeah, something that really resonated with me that you said in that first column about elevating coaching there, Ray, was the human in the loop. And we found the exact same thing. Artificial intelligence is great, but you're still coaching a human being, and human beings want to be coached by other human beings. What we found using even our conversation intelligence tools at Allego or the AI role plays that you mentioned is that artificial intelligence helps managers focus on areas of concern or areas of opportunity, and then allows them to go in and provide valuable coaching within those areas. Like you mentioned, a specific moment in a call or a specific, tonality in a pitch. And it's really helped us scale frontline managers, right? First level managers that we've taken from super reps or really successful reps, turn them into managers or directors, and they don't necessarily know how to coach yet. They know how they sold, but they don't know how to coach all the different personalities or skill levels on their team. So 100% agree that artificial intelligence just helps us hone in on where to focus. The big thing for the accelerate deal progress that we've seen is exactly what you said. Why something been in stage 180 days? That used to be a report that we would get with stagnant or overdue opportunities, and then we would go in and either clean them up or close them out or send some sort of Hail Mary email trying to revive it.
Right.
When we launched Allego deal alerts, we were customer zero. And essentially what they do is look across all the opportunities on a given team, and they start to identify those risks that cause deals to stop very early. So for instance, a large enterprise deal that we're not multi-threaded, right? Average enterprise deal now has 11 stakeholders. If we're only talking to 2 or 3 and only one person's engaging with content, we know that that's going to stall in 30, 60, 90 days. Or, we're not above the power line and nobody's been engaged above a director level. We can start to prescribe to a rep what we can do to stop that from becoming a stalled deal in 180 days. So all of these very well aligned with what we see in real world markets with both our teams and our customers' teams. And then, like you mentioned, the AI capabilities. I mean, there's a note taker on this webinar, right? Harriet has her Fireflies note taker. So this has become table stakes for folks to save time, get their notes compiled, share those with the rest of their team, whether it's a member of the buying committee after a call that couldn't make it, or an internal team member, sales engineers, whoever it might be, consultants or post sales that might need the information from their sellers. So this aligns just perfectly well with what we see.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting going back to the title of our webinar today about your pipeline looks fine, but why are you so nervous? And I think there's a little bit to unpack there. It's like I think managers know that, well, the pipeline may be adequate. Maybe we're using a 3x or 4x multiple or something, but they kind of know that that's not really qualified, or maybe it's not as clean as it needs to be, or they've just learned from experience that, boy, that may not get us there. I think as you were talking about, especially with the accelerating deal progress and really digging into that, we're able to then verify that information. We're able to get more confidence in that and do something about it, right? Versus saying, well, we think if we have 3 times, over the life cycle, over the year, we'll probably come out okay. Well, that's not good enough anymore. And that also doesn't, that isn't an appropriate answer to the board when the board asks, how come you missed? Oh, well, we'll make it up next month, right? That's no longer acceptable. Yeah.
And depending on the size of the organization, you have those quarters where you live or die by the big deal, right? And everyone's eyes are on this big deal, and it's the one that's going to make us or break us. Maybe there's 2 or 3 across each team that you're really keeping your eyes on as you go into each forecast call. And those get a lot of attention, but they don't necessarily use data to back up the attention. It's gut feel from the rep, gut feel from the manager. Maybe we have a great champion, but until you start looking into those signals to see, like we talked about, you're not multi-threaded, you're not at power, there hasn't been any pull engagement from the other side, you're really flying blind on something that you're going to the board or the executive team saying, let's go make investments for hiring based on these deals we're going to close. And then all of a sudden they don't come through, and now you're playing a game of CYA.
Yeah, well, and I think that the ability, again, to leverage the technology to help make those decisions easier, or at least, cleaner, and maybe get ahead of those. I think that's the promise. So let's continue on here. I think it's interesting to kind of look at the before and after here as well. And again, this is our crystal ball. So, this is projection based on what we're seeing, and a lot of research across what others are looking at. But I think as you see what we presume and what we'd like to see is that those maroon slices are shrinking, right? We're able to take a few points here and there off of each of those by automating, by improving the leverage there, and freeing us up to do more coaching. So coaching almost doubles. And we know that, the highest performing sales organizations are the ones where the managers are making that commitment. and are out there coaching, whether riding along with them or, coaching after the deal or having those. And this isn't just a one-on-one or a team meeting, but these are, real coaching conversations to help focus on those deals and improve those skills. What we hear across every workshop we conduct is, I'd love to coach, I just don't have the time to do it.
Right.
And, so this is the promise is getting some of that time back, being able to focus more on performance management. I think the selling, we're still supporting the selling activities. The idea is we can automate that and make it more efficient. And the slice that shows up there is, kind of in the change leadership and the orchestration. I mean, I think the manager of the future is going to have to be that one who is helping their team adopt this change and the new technology and really be the AI evangelist in a sense, because that's where we're going to be going. It's moving that quickly. And so that's a new capability. They're not going to be the ones who can just produce the report or we had a client who called it, spreadsheet coaching, where they would just look at the spreadsheet and then send off a Slack or an email. And so I think that change management becomes a new competency in the future.
Ray, we've never talked about this, but I'm sure you have an opinion. We hear a lot from organizations with tenured enterprise sellers. Brendan, Ray, my team doesn't need coaching. They've been doing this for 20 years. They're tenured sellers. What do you think this shift into more time for team coaching is going to do for organizations like that, or even enablement and leadership teams that say, I don't need coaching. I don't want to focus on it. That's not my top priority.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a mindset that we need to kind of communicate. I mean, one, building the case of we know that coaching equates to higher performance levels.
Yes.
I try not to use a lot of sports analogies. They can be overused, but the idea that any top athlete in any sport you want to choose has a team of coaches and they have people who help them get better every day. And so when we think about even the people that are at the top of their game, the best at a particular activity, but they're getting coached by somebody who's not better necessarily, but is better at getting their potential out, at improving in certain areas or understanding their blockers. So I think those, especially senior sellers who are like, no, leave me alone, I got it. It's like, well, we can't afford to do that because you could actually be producing twice as much if you're able to unlock that potential. And so, getting that coaching mindset across. And it's not, I think often coaching gets a bad rap because it's more about telling or, just being directive. Or we had a client who equated coaching was only happen when you're on a PIP, formal coaching. And so it's like, well, it had a bad connotation. They're like, we don't even want to call it coaching because everybody thinks you're going to get fired. It's like, that's so sad to have that perspective versus, no, guess what? Everybody's getting coaching up to the CEO, and we're going to make a concerted effort to focus on this because this is what is going to produce better results.
Yeah, I love the sports analogy, and we make it across kind of every, if you're a professional singer, professional violinist, you're constantly practicing and getting coaching, right? Yeah. The other thing I love about your presentation here is the team coaching. I've seen fantastic results from peer-to-peer coaching or stealing from one another and finding out what works. This idea of getting the team together to coach as we have more time is, I think, something we need to see more of. We see it too often inside of our customer base where, we have one-on-ones or we do a call coaching review with our SDRs, but getting the whole team together, if we can save them time with those mundane data entry tasks, that's where the real magic happens that we've seen, especially if you have a great framework or expertise from an organization like yours.
Yeah. So, again, this is some of where we think things are going. We'll have a couple of slides at the end of kind of what the 36 month kind of projection. But I mean, I'm optimistic. One, I think it helps me sleep at night, but I think it's great to think about that role changing to be more strategic and then to leverage those things that bring out the human element, right? And let AI do what it does well. But I think it is an exciting time. I think that role is going to evolve. I think it has to because we're going to see spans of control increasing. All of a sudden you have 15 reports. Well, you better be pretty good at leveraging the tools and then focus in on those things that really matter, that are really a highly leveraged use of your time, and coaching is one of those.
Ray, and you can push this to another area of the presentation if you'd like, but I'd be curious from you as we make this shift from, the AI, the current manager to the AI supported manager, how do you think that changes the makeup of the people we should be looking at to promote or hire into managerial roles? Because it seems like there's a lot less reporting and analysis, the old school dashboard manager, right? Into somebody who's going to be a change agent, changing leadership styles, team coaching, performance management. What have you seen from organizations that have already adopted this as far as the persona that they're looking for?
Yeah, and it is interesting because, and we know, I mean, this has been true for years that the best reps don't necessarily make the best managers. What got them there as an independent contributor sometimes works against them. So I think we're really looking at, those who can be that people leader that can help get the most out of people. When again, you look at, in sports, a coach who probably wasn't the best player, but really understands the game, understands how to get the best out of each individual. And then going forward, and we will talk about this towards the end, I think they're going to be more capable and versed in how to leverage AI, how to orchestrate, how to architect those solutions. There's going to be an aspect that they need to be able to leverage those tools because the agents are going to be part of their team. And so we need to work in this mixed team, and people can debate whether that's a good thing or not, but I think that's reality. Is we're going to have agents and reps and AI agents working to support our business.
Yeah, I agree with you. So if you're a sales manager now or an aspiring sales manager, the time to adopt artificial intelligence is now. Don't get left behind. Right. I want to bring this to life a little bit.
Yep.
Last year at our annual Allego Sales Success Summit, which for those who are attending and for you, Ray, and other customers, it's coming up again here in May in Boston. We actually saw a real world example of utilizing artificial intelligence for just this, right? So we saw ZoomInfo, who everyone's familiar with, right? They have a fantastic go-to-market motion. Their organization has been 2,000 sellers out in the field every single day doing amazing work. What they found is they were leveraging 5 different tools to do this annual certification of their 2,000 sellers on their value proposition. So they were using a learning management system. They were using G Sheets and G Docs to do scorecards and all sorts of other things. And the process was really fragmented and not only difficult for the manager, but really difficult for the rep. They also noticed that because of this process being fragmented and very difficult, the manager feedback and coaching they were getting was getting inconsistent, right? We all know that if we have to do something 50 times in a horrible process, eventually we start pencil whipping it. We want to get the process done and get back to those selling motions and selling activities or coaching activities that we know drive revenue. What they found by moving over to an AI powered system in Allego was that they were able to roll out this unified process. So from end to end, the rep came in, they were able to practice their pitch. Then once they had a version of the pitch that they liked, they were seamlessly able to share it all in one system to their manager. Now, in between the rep submitting and the manager getting this task to go coach, there was this AI overlay that we talked about, Ray, where it started to heat seek into specific areas based on the skill profile. We talked about skills earlier in your presentation, based on the skill profile that ZoomInfo had determined was needed for success. So it allowed managers to heat seek into where they could coach. And what they found is that it cut ramp time for their SDR team by 50%. So that's fairly significant ROI out of the gate. But the other thing they noticed was because the managers were honed in on where they needed to coach, and they didn't have to go to 4 or 5 different tools to do this and different dashboards, they were able to cut down the coaching time from 15 minutes per rep to 3 minutes per rep. This saved 400 hours of managerial time across ZoomInfo, and they were actually able to increase their completion rate 18%. So you can see here the ROI from time savings, efficiency, confidence across the board just by putting that layer of artificial intelligence into a workflow really drove a massive result for an organization like ZoomInfo.
Well, I think it's a fantastic, and I love having the data to show the outcome, and saving time, improving the completion rates and the satisfaction, right, that they actually enjoyed or engaged with the platform. And I think that's one of the challenges, right, is there are a lot of great enablement programs that die on the vine because we can't get either managers to provide feedback, or they're too busy doing a lot of other things, or even the reps, it's just too laborious. So I think this has the potential to focus that in on the things that really matter and then help make it more scalable, right, across the organization at a time commitment that's more palatable.
Yeah, I can't imagine taking a quarter of my time as a sales manager to get pitch certifications done, right? If it's
Right,
not one
right.
click easy for salespeople and sales managers, there's no way they're going to adopt these great enablement programs. So it was great to see, Michelle and the team over at ZoomInfo do an awesome job of making things very, very simple for their team to drive some great results.
Yeah.
So Ray, back over to you. This manager role progress, the three accelerating phases. Give us an idea of what's going to happen over the next 3 years. Where are we headed?
Yeah, and Brendan, you'll have to hold me to it. Come back in 3 years and let's go over this slide again. And
Put it in my calendar now.
right, I will absolutely, I'm sure have updates or have to eat crow on some of this. But I think these are the trends. Some of these things are not debatable in terms of what we're seeing. The current reality, I mean, we know that almost half of that time is spent on those lower value activities, and that we're spending a lot of time on data and being time constrained and not having complete or accurate forecasts. And really we're often measured just on, okay, did we hit the quota or are we producing an accurate forecast? But in some ways that's a disservice because the manager doesn't have the ability to influence all of those things currently.
Right.
I think in 18 months, and we're seeing this transition, right? But changing how the work gets done. So the reps are leveraging AI to be more effective. And then the managers in a number of the areas that we've talked about and leveraging platforms like Allego, right, can be more effective to be able to do that strategic coaching, to help with other change initiatives that may be going on, and becoming more effective, especially at identifying deals that may be off track, helping to coach those. And so the coaching impact is really going to be one of those measures, being able to have highly accurate forecasts and being able to predict and see that we're getting a return on the AI. So I think that's where we're seeing this year as a promise. And then over 3 years, I mean, I think this is where we see it become more technical. The AI generated briefings, being able to leverage AI in new creative areas, and that the manager is going to be somewhat of an architect of putting those systems together or knowing how they all work, so that they can leverage that across their team. And it's going to change our workflows. It's going to change the skills. So they need to be, again, the one that's helping to drive that change and help their team along, because the team is looking for guidance. And so
Yes.
I guess that would be my one suggestion. If you're a frontline manager or you're training frontline managers, they need to become the experts and lean in and really be able to leverage that. And people say, well, is AI going to take your job? And I think the quote is true, that it's not going to be AI taking the job. It's going to be the person, or in this case, the manager who knows AI, who's going to be the one who advances and is successful. And those who drag their feet, may struggle a little bit more. So I think in the future, they really become much more of that architect pulling it all together.
Yeah, Ray, I think you might. I don't even know if 3 years is all it's going to take. Like your 18 months projections here, some of these things are already coming to fruition from the
Yeah.
research you all have created. It's incredible how fast it's moving. And I feel like every 2 months I read some sort of article saying, everything is now 10x faster inside of Claude, or I can do
Right.
10 times more than I could do during the last release. So I'm excited to see how this goes. And I think you're exactly right. We still have discussions, not as regularly as we used to, but fairly regularly, where leaders say, I don't believe in artificial intelligence. I don't think we're going to need it for our team. And I think you're right. I think if you don't adopt artificial intelligence, somebody who has over the past few years is eventually going to upend you in the market or replace you in your current role. So
Yep.
it's going to be very interesting to see how quickly some of these things move over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I've mentioned here, and this may resonate with the AI doubters or those who are still going, well, wait, is this a good thing, or should we be headed in this direction? Is one, I think the cat is out of the bag, right? We are headed down this path, as you said, they're using it. I think what's most important for the manager is to realize, well, their team is going to be using it, whether they are promoting it or supporting it or not. And so being able to identify, is this an appropriate use? Are they doing the checks and balances that are necessary to keep us out of trouble or not embarrassing ourselves? And are there better ways to do that? So, we may be going
Yes.
down a rabbit hole and it's like, well, wait, I don't want the reps spending half of their time trying to create these agents. Let's bubble up what's working, or let's capture that across the organization and leverage that. So I think the manager is, again, going to have to be that one who's kind of orchestrating and also providing the guardrails and the stopgaps to make sure we're doing it appropriately. So it
Yes.
becomes even more important.
And Ray, there is a question in the chat, and it's around psychological safety in AI. What is psychological safety?
Yeah, I think it's just feeling more comfortable, and making sure that we're okay using it in the flow of work. So it's a people skill. So we talk about that in kind of 3 years down the line, being more comfortable and feeling that, one, our job is protected, that what we're doing, matters, and that we're able to leverage it appropriately. So I think it does go to the manager being that leader and that change agent to say, no, it's okay. This is how we're going to use it. This is how it's going to work in the organization.
Exactly. And Joy, we see it. I'm sure you've heard it from your teams. We have, frontline managers that say, I don't want to leverage AI because it might expose gaps in my team or inconsistencies in how we execute, or reps worry or SDRs worry that artificial intelligence is going to take my job. So they're hesitant to then experiment and use these things that can really help them get to the last mile where you need a human to go out and execute. So making them feel confident that these are the tools that are available and approved by our team. Here's how you can use them to make yourself better. And these aren't tools here to replace you. They're here to make you better and more effective to drive our company forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an area where we can spend a lot of time spinning our wheels and being uncomfortable, because people don't know. But like with any change, what we know is it's going to keep moving. It's going to keep adapting and adopting. We're going to adopt these tools. So we better move with it and kind of figure out the skills that are going to keep us relevant. So I think that's the only way to make sense of it. There's certainly no guarantees. And, is it going to change the frontline rep role and the frontline manager role? Absolutely. But providing an area that we're safe, we can work within, and we have the support that we need to do our jobs.
Absolutely. Great question, Joy. And keep those coming in the chat. We appreciate it. Let's move over, Ray. You have these kind of hallmarks of high-performing sales organizations that I thought were fascinating when I first saw them. But do you want to talk a little bit about these kind of 5 key areas?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we'll take a step back from the AI and say, this is actually a study that we did pre-AI, so going 5+ years back with Selling Power, and we tried to look at what were high-performing organizations doing differently, and what are some of those hallmarks, those who were hitting a high percentage of their quota. What did that look like? And so you can almost use this like a checklist or an assessment if people want to dive into this in more detail. But we use this as a way of driving skills for the frontline manager and thinking, well, what does good look like? Now, what do we have to do to help the people be more effective in those roles? So in leadership, do we have a vision? The frontline managers say, well, no, that's the sales vision. But do you have a vision for your team? Do you know where you want to take them? Do you know what you're doing this year that's different than last year? How do you actually drive accountability, leadership, motivation within the organization? Coaching, we've talked a lot about, but what we know is in high-performing organizations, coaching is something that's taken seriously. It's structured. There's more formal focus. I mean, those where the leaders say, no, I want to see X number of call visits, or I want you to listen to this number of calls, or at least have a certain number of conversations and capture them somewhere. So it's more than just hallway coaching, or we call it Groundhog Day coaching, where it's like, well, wait, didn't we have this conversation last week or last month? Like there's often no outcome. So we know that good coaching needs to be managed, needs to be focused, and the managers need to have those skills and really develop those skills to have a good coaching conversation, make it collaborative, make it positive, and drive that improvement. On the recruiting side, I mean, there's a lot we can talk about there, but do we know what a good top performing rep looks like, and are we using that to drive the competencies? A lot of times the job description is written from an HR perspective, but it doesn't really look at, well, what is it going to take to be successful in this role? What are they going to be
Right.
doing 3 months, 6 months, a year after they're hired? And then do we have the skills to do that behavior-based interviewing to really assess the fit and make the decision? So again, a lot of these are, AI can help enable it, but these are foundational skills for the frontline manager. The same with managing performance. Are we setting expectations? Are we managing both the leading and lagging indicators, those, kind of forward-looking behaviors, as well as the results that we're looking for? And if there's a gap, how are we having that conversation? I think that's critical, to be able to close the gap before they get put on a PIP, right? Or
Right.
we're like, well, I've tried everything. It's like, well, have you really? So I think managing the performance and then the pipeline, which we talked about, are we able to accurately predict and forecast? And then as we're looking through the pipeline and identify those deals, do we have a process for really driving those forward and having those deal conversations? So I know this is a lot on a slide, but I wanted to kind of wrap it back up because I still believe that, humans have a role and we're going to be in the middle of this. And these are skills that regardless, the frontline manager is still going to need to perform, but we can be even more effective leveraging the AI and the platforms and some of the things you've talked about, that Allego helps enable.
Ray, the interesting thing for me is, like you mentioned, this is, data that's been around, right? These are areas of focus that have been around pre-AI and even post-AI. 4 out of 5 of these things focus on the investment that we make in humans. It's the most impactful investment that we can make on an organization is the people that we bring in to execute the work, right? And drive the mission forward. And I think you're 100% right on the recruiting and selecting people. I mean, I've never seen a job posting that focuses on behaviors or competencies. It always focuses on how many years of experience do you have? Are you willing to travel? Have you sold into these types of things? It's never about the competencies or behaviors that we know drive success. And I'd love to see us get to a place where that's the way that we start to select top tier talent, just like you do in any other major sporting league or acting, like we talked about. They're looking for the future production and the right person, right fit, right competencies for the role. So I think this is the most important thing for me going forward that I was able to take away. So thank you for sharing and putting this all together.
That's great. Well, as you might imagine, we love talking about this. It's an area that we spend a lot of time is on helping to develop frontline managers and provide that training, and now integrate with tools like Allego and conversational intelligence and really helping the managers become more effective. So obviously, if anybody'd like to talk more about it, we'd love to continue the conversation. I think we do have some time for questions. So happy to open that up, and then we'll have our information here as well if you'd like to follow up with a further conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray.
Sorry, Brendan.
Appreciate it. No, I just want to say thank you for Ray for your time as always, your expertise, the amount of data that you brought, and obviously your real world experience. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks for
both.
having me.
As you see on your screen, there's a QR code to the resource room that we've made available to you that will have the slides. And as soon as we're done here, we'll add the recording, as well as some other webinars we've done with Ray and other free resources that are available to you. I've also added in Brendan and Ray's LinkedIn, so make sure you connect with them and shoot them a message. Just say thanks for the webinar today. And let's see. So we've got a question here from David. He said, "How to manage regulatory risks, ensure unbiased and high quality data, and integrate AI into existing outdated technical infrastructure."
It's a great question that we get across every single one of our customers. And I think there's a balance. The first thing that we did as an organization is we figured out a couple of different large language models that we could do, licensing deals with to not train those models externally from what we put in, right? And then we gave guidance and training. We actually created at Allego, David, what we call the AI Center of Excellence. And there's different folks from across the different business units that were early adopters to artificial intelligence to help share best practices and work with our information security, legal, and IT teams to ensure we were using technology in the right way. And then the other piece is finding vendors and partnering with vendors that are used to working in these regulated environments that are also offering AI. We've seen a million AI startups pop up that promise to do everything under the sun with no guidelines or compliance structure on the back end. And that's going to be really difficult for folks that work in financial services, pharmaceuticals, security software, manufacturing to adopt. But Ray, I'll pass it to you. I'm sure you've seen similar things in your line of work.
Well, and I love that idea of having, I think we need to have a governance structure regardless of how large the organization. And maybe that's two people, but at least, some sort of oversight to say, well, what's appropriate? And then, one of the things that we've seen, because I think people have spent a lot of time spinning their wheels trying to develop an AI strategy or to pull all of this together. And one, it's moving so quickly and it's also almost too heavy of a lift
Yeah.
versus going out and looking. And I mean, we did a fascinating study with an organization where we just went out and looked at how are the managers currently using AI? What are some of the top performers doing? Let's capture those, make sure they're safe and appropriate, and then get those out there. And even
Yes.
across very, very large technology organizations that we work with, global organizations, this idea of collaborative learning and having sharing of best practices, let's get it out there, what's working, so that we can start small and get those 4-hour wins versus saying, well, we're going to wait until we have this overarching strategy. I heard somebody say there shouldn't be an AI strategy. There should be, how does AI enable your business strategy? There's only one business strategy. And
That's
so,
right.
let's look at how that can support it. But I think getting those quick wins, getting those, kind of safe and appropriate uses is one way to look at doing that before we can, boil the ocean or without trying to boil the ocean.
Ray, that's interesting on that because we've seen a lot of organizations come to us and say, we have this AI budget, and our executive team has told us to go out and buy AI. And we talked about it on an earlier slide, organizations not seeing the ROI from artificial intelligence that they once thought. And I don't think it's a symptom of artificial intelligence. I think it's a symptom of not people not using, like you said, what's the business goal or business challenge I'm trying to solve, and then finding a solution that leverages AI to solve it. They're simply going out and either creating or buying AI tools because they think that's what they have to do. I would say take a step back, slow things down, take a look at your business and see what's going to make an impact, and then find a solution provider or a partner that's going to leverage AI to help you get there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll go back to the one slide we talked about with the 3 themes, but that's a pretty useful filter, I think. And maybe there are others for your organization, but does it help the manager be better coaches? Because we know there's a
Yep.
strong correlation there. Does it help drive deals forward and help us close more business? So how does it inform that? Or does it help us offload administrative or repetitive time? Does it give the manager time back? It'd be
Yes.
interesting to look at that with those filters in place. And if not, we'd really have to ask, well, then why are we doing it? Or what are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah, it's a great filter, a great lens to look through.
Yeah.
Anything
Any
else in
other
the chat,
questions you're
Marcus?
seeing? Yeah, Marcus.
Yeah.
Actually looks pretty quiet, but I will shoot a reminder out. There is a 3-question survey at the end. Let us know how we did. Give us a little rating. Make sure you connect with Brendan and Ray on LinkedIn. And again, that digital room available for you with the slides and a ton of free resources. I will get the recording in.